Sniper gets called out a lot for a class being nothing more than a point-and-click adventure game, requiring nothing but some concise clicks to a cranium. But good aim alone will only ever get you so far in TF2, and is only half the puzzle to perfecting your sniper gameplay. Positioning is just as important, if not more so, to being a successful sniper. The more map knowledge you have on where good spots are to sit and snipe from, the more skulls you can shatter. And what map is stronger to start with than Upward? Being among the first maps added to the game, Upward excels by being an overall balanced map with plenty of open spaces, flanks, and of course, sniper sight lines. If you watched Uncle Dane's Engineer's Blueprint videos, the formatting of this will be very similar, going over each and every point from start to finish, and showcasing the several spots you can stand in, each with their own pros and cons. Making your way directly out of spawn and towards the first point reveals a plentiful plethora of positions. From here we have 7 distinct spots to snipe from. The rocks, the playground, secret, under the playground, cliff, the point itself, the slope, the stairs, and the risky rat spot, the roof. The rocks and playground are the most common spots to stand in as sniper during the pre-round setup and the actual match, providing a solid sightline into the enemy spawn. The rocks are a tad bit risky to use, however, due to how easy it is to get flanked from the cliff face or bombed from the sky by a soldier, but at least it does provide cover from your biggest competitor, other snipers. Something standing on the playground doesn't have much of. Standing up here is like kicking a bomb, it's bound to blow up on you. Although you're covered by most enemies since they have to run around your team to reach you, watch the skies for soldiers and demos planning to jump up here. The main problem I have with the playground here is that you're pointing a neon sign at yourself that says "shoot me." Sure, other classes won't likely kill you, but the chip damage and constant flinching you'll take from them is a constant annoyance, and every enemy sniper has a clean, clear shot on you as well. Secret, the spot underneath playground, is a surprisingly strong sniper spot. For a short period of time. The lack of light makes it hard to spot you from a distance, and as most people have their eyes trained to look up rather than down, you can get a couple cheeky kills in. Just note that people do catch on quickly to this, and the enclosed space really cramps your ability to run away, making it easy to spam out. This spot also becomes unusable as the enemy pushes up past the trench here. If the enemy manages to push through, your best bets are to stand and snipe from are the cliffs or the slope. The slope is an extremely strong sightline, covering both the trench, stairs, and flank. Unfortunately, similar to the playground, the lack of cover means you can be spotted from a mile away and counter-sniped, especially from the roof here. On the opposite side of it is the cliff. The sightline isn't as strong and the wall behind you makes you prone to rocket spam, plus the little walk up from the stairs to sneaky scouts and spies. It's a solid spot if the enemy team prefers to take the flank rather than the main path though. The stairs and roof are what I'm going to call one-time use spots. The stairs are sort of like the rocks on the opposite side, but there's a massive blind spot that makes getting snuck up on even easier. If you have no team to support you, it's best to ignore it and back up. The roof is my personal go-to spot, mainly because of this one jump spot right along the fence here, granting you a sightline straight into the enemy spawn that's not normally there. You'd be shocked about how many people will ignore you here. A ton of snipers love to rush the roof only to get sniped from behind. I don't recommend staying here too long though and falling back to the rocks. Moving towards the second point, if the cart goes through the tunnel, you're essentially screwed for sniping. Not much can be done about the tunnel. What you can cover though is the top side. Most of the sniper spots here just take one step forward and one step back depending on how close your team is and how far pushed back your enemies are. Be cautious about overextending here though, as this section of the map is a chaotic battlefield. If the cart manages to get pushed through the tunnel, your best bet is snipe in or around the shack, on the platform here, or even at the mouth of this trench. The shack is pretty similar to the playground, there's little coverage and everyone and their mum knows about it. It's a decent sight line, but it's prone to rocket spam and other snipers. Plus, you gotta worry about that flank along the cliffside that leaves you more vulnerable than a white girl with daddy issues. Sniping around the shack and the point is typically a better bet. You still have to deal with enemy snipers, but at least your team can help you with every other class rushing you. The top of the trench is an excellent spot for this, by the way. You have to be somewhat careful about people who run behind the shack here and straight to you, primarily spies and scouts, but a well-placed sentry on the platform here will usually take care of those issues. You cover up most of your body, meaning Hail Mary shots and attempts to flinch you are also in vain. Standing on the platform with your engineers and their sentries and dispensers can also be an okay spot to stand. The only issue is by the time you really need to stand here, the enemy probably already has the point in their back pocket. The other issue is teammates. Everyone loves to stand on the platform, meaning all your enemies love to spam on that platform. All it takes is one solid crit rocket just to kill everybody, including you. Looking at the third point reveals much of the same. Very few spots to stand in, with most of them being out in the open. By the time the cart just gets pushed onto the wooden ramp, hopefully your team has respawned and is trying to hold them off there and in front of the spawn building. If that's the case, you can take a shot at shooting people from the roller coaster turn section. Just watch out for people pushing the cart forward and fall back when needed. Recall the mouth of the trench we used? Well, now enemy snipers are going to use it, so watch out. A safer but overall worse spot you can stand and snipe from is a little back near this bush here. It doesn't have the same sight line as standing on top of the tracks, but you're free to shoot through the openings in the pillars with little contestation. By the time the cart makes its way closer to the point, you are limited in spots to snipe from. You can stand in the far back here shooting anyone who pops their heads out over the horizon, but there isn't anything too dynamic happening. If you feel confident in both your team and your aim, you can try sneaking up towards the C hut door here. Pretty vulnerable to scouts and spies thanks to the cliff flank being directly behind you, but it's a decent spot to snipe one or two people from, especially to deny a push. If you plan on standing in the far back here, just be wary of snipers who make their way up the roller coaster to snipe you. Also be cautious of people taking the long way around just to flank you from behind. Typically an engineer will set up here with a sentry, meaning it shouldn't be too much of an issue, but one flanking soldier or demo will quickly ruin your day. The final point here takes place inside a pretty enclosed area, so pyros, soldiers, and demos pose an even greater threat here than normal. As a result, it's best to just stick to sniping near spawn, either up with the engineer that's guaranteed to be in the pub spot, along the balcony, or to the sides of spawn. Hugging the back wall and standing near the final point itself isn't also a terrible spot to snipe from while the enemy team is hunkered down around the corner. If your team is also holding the windowed area here, sniping from up top these crates is also a solid spot. Just be ready to abandon ship whenever you see an enemy rush down the hallway. The final point is pretty stagnant, especially if you commit to sniping around spawn. You'll have to deal with the odd soldier and sniper shooting you from the windows, but most other classes can't reach you without support, and since you're standing right by spawn, there's a likely chance someone else will kill them before they get to you. Spies can calmly make their way up to the balcony, but the tightness of the area makes them pretty easy to deal with Girardi or even an SMG. And that about wraps up sniping spots on defense. As a good reminder, you should never fully commit to just standing and sniping in one spot though, moving with your team during pushes to drop retreating players and falling back when the enemy pushes you. Switching from spot to spot throws off enemy snipers as well, a skill you'll need since everyone is probably going to be using these new spots after watching this video. The hardest section for snipers starts right at the spawn gate. You're extremely limited to where you can safely stand without worry. The two side exits are easy to get me-shotted from if you aren't careful, while the main exit is a nice sightline straight into the playground. I always find it best just to wait a second or two for my team to push out a little bit before walking out of spawn and dealing with enemy snipers. A lot of people love to stand on these stairs in spawn, and although it makes a good sightline for enemies on the playground, it's terrible if they're anywhere else. You are limited in play space. They are not. They can easily reposition. You can't. If you plan on sniping from inside spawn, don't sit on the stairs the entire time. Jump onto them when the gates open, giving you a slight chance rather than allowing enemy snipers to land up a shot for a solid minute against you. Sniping on offense is a lot more passive than sniping on defense, ironically. While you're on the defense, you're constantly walking up and down the battlefield, moving from the front to the back, while on offense, however, you're stuck in certain spots until your teammates can push through. Prime example is this first point section here. You essentially only have two real choices to snipe from here while everyone else fights near the cubby. The rocks outside of spawn, and the roof. The rocks are a decent spot for taking out snipers standing on the slope, in addition to anyone who's been pushed back thanks to your teammates. Just keep an eye out for people coming alongside the cliff or up the stairs as they'll quickly kill you. The roof, on the other hand, is a supreme sniping spot. Enemies will have a difficult time reaching you at all, only capable of dealing chip damage, allowing you enough time to fall back if you do get overwhelmed. The sightline it provides is massive too, granting a large view of the playground, cliff slope, and tunnel entrance. The only real downside to this spot is how open and visible you are to other snipers. Even snipers' other natural-born enemy, the spy, can't do much while you perch up here as long as you have some perceptual awareness. Moving towards the second point, you can decide to shoot and snipe from inside the tunnel. I wouldn't recommend it due to the lack of maneuverability you'll have and how close you have to be to the front line to snipe anyone, but it is a good mix-up spot for dealing with enemy snipers who stand on the shack. The much more common and overall better spot to stand up on is the hill. You won't be able to hit anyone around the corner standing on the platform from here, but everywhere else is sublime for shattering skulls. Be mindful of snipers hiding behind the shack or around the trench as they don't stick out as much compared to the dozens of soldiers, heavies, demos, and pyros that will be fighting in and around the point. By the time your team pushes the cart through the tunnel, the hill might not be the most ideal spot to stand. Most of the defenders will be holding on the platform, typically with an engineered dispenser keeping them all safe. It's best to mosey on over to the cliff face flank near the shack. This gives you a direct line of sight onto the platform, taking out the engineer pestering your team. Don't stay here for too long though, get your kills and help your team push through. If the enemy team does get enough momentum to make a push, they'll be going over that cliff. By the time your team captures the second point, they'll typically be able to push it straight to the roller coaster without too much issue. Standing by the cart and helping to push it is pretty safe for the time being if no snipers are standing at the top of the turn by the point. If there is, it's your job to take them out. I recommend standing by the shack or in the trench. Other players won't be able to rush you as they'll have to cross the cart to reach you, and the flank pass spawn is typically a chaotic choke point, meaning they can't choose to cross from there either. Unfortunately, there is a limit of where you can safely snipe from. Everything past this sort of line here puts you at great risk of getting gibbed. Don't misinterpret my words though, there is still some benefit to going up here. Typically, your team will run into another wall requiring a decent Uber push to get the cart to the point, with a sentry and dispenser being placed near this elbow joint of the map here. This is a tricky spot to reliably snipe from as the wall of snipers makes poking your head out a death sentence. The only decent spot to snipe from is a sneaky side angle here in the C hut. You're capable of getting 1 or 2 quick kills here, but people will catch on quick. By taking out the engineer or medic along here, hopefully your team will have enough momentum to push the cart past the point. If they're still having some trouble with people coming out and standing at the far back here, you're pretty safe to stand on the roller coaster turn section and snipe them as they come out. Just don't get skill checked by other snipers. By the time the cart makes its way to the final point in the inside section, sniping becomes really difficult to do. Enemy snipers have the entire entrance locked down and their eyes on the cart at all times, and the engineer that's guaranteed to be on the balcony prevents you from sniping from some of the windows up top. Your best bet is to stand back and snipe anyone who tries to make their way along the back wall here, picking off snipers who are also trying to ease their way across. Once the sentry is dealt with though, the final point opens up a lot on where you can snipe from. You'll still have to deal with the trickle of enemies flowing out of spawn, especially engineers who will try to rebuild their sentries on the balcony, and snipers standing beside them. But the windows are now a decent spot to stand and pick people off as they walk out. Just be mindful that you're pretty noticeable up there, and soldiers and demos will spam you out with other hit scan classes causing you to flinch. Overall a good spot, but it needs your team below you as well to serve as a distraction. You can go farther with this spot however, past the windows to these crates here. Hardly anyone ever looks up here as they're typically much more focused on the people at the entrance or up by the windows, walking past you and allowing you to shoot them freely. These crates also provide excellent cover, especially if you manage to get here while there's still a sentry on the balcony across. A little pro tip here, which shows how much time I spend looking for stupid and cheesable sniper spots, is that you can actually shoot through these crates. You might think this is a pretty niche thing, but you'd be surprised by how much mileage I've gotten out of it. Just be cautious about soldiers that rocket jump from directly below you right on top of you, in addition to the enemy team pushing through up to the windows section themselves. You're a sitting duck there, and there's nothing you can do if that happens. One other spot that surprisingly works well for taking out people on the balcony is standing directly underneath the little drop-off ramp that acts as the final point. 90% of the time, people walking out of spawn will notice the sniper in the window, scoped in, waiting for them. But no one ever expects the guy standing 30 feet underground. This spot worked exclusively to take out people on the balcony, by the way. The sight line for everything else is non-existent. You're essentially tunneling underneath the front line too, by the way, so don't be too shocked when you bump into an enemy near the full health and ammo pack here, or on the 2 staircases down to your spot. If you're feeling extra courageous and there's no sentry to harass you, you can go up the stairs here and walk straight up to the enemy's balcony, brutally executing enemy snipers that need to be taught a lesson in awareness. If the game is ever cutting down to the wire, it's a lot better to abandon your spot and try your best to hug and push the cart. Best case scenario, your teammates will take care of the enemy swarming out of spawn, allowing you to push it fully. Worst case scenario is that you bought them a little bit more time to formulate a full-on last-ditch push. A lot of people envision Sniper as a stationary statue, firmly planted alongside Engineer, Sentry, and Dispenser, or even further back than him. But to be an effective sniper, it's important you push and fall back with your team frequently, not just improving your chances of hitting a headshot, but preventing getting headshot yourself. You shouldn't just be standing in this small section away from the front line, but just behind your teammates on the front lines too in some cases. Especially on a map like Upward, which isn't just segmented by the points, but the points between the points as well. If you felt like I missed talking about a subject or a spot here or there, feel free to comment it down below. Personally, I feel like I sort of skimmed on talking about specifics when dealing with spies, but perhaps I'll rectify that by making a full-on Sniper v Spy guide video instead. Also, talk to me about what map you want to see next. Currently, Badwater Basin is looking like the winner. Also keep in mind that Poopy Joe, somewhere in the video, winner gets a prize, whoever finds him first, yada yada, more in the description.